Welcome to Getting Heated, the place to debate and discuss all things surf-related. Super Bowl weekend is here, which has us thinking, will surfing benefit from having its own version of the Super Bowl Sunday? Also, find out if Mick and Ross are in favor of cutting down the number of surfers on tour. And, do you need access to the ocean to be a pro surfer? Or will we see a new breed of wave pool surfers on tour? Plus, could the typical surfboard become obsolete to future generations? Finally, the legendary Tom Curren talks to us about Quiver, the championship tour, and his new film, Free Scrubber. It's a big show. Let's get it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Getting Heated, the place for discussion, debate, and disputes on all things surf-related. I'm Dave Prodan, temporarily here moderating the true stars of the show, Coolangatta's Mick Fanning and the North Shore's Ross Williams. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Going great. Thanks, Dave. How we going, Ross?
Good to be here. Thanks, Mick. Dave, let's do it.
So here in the United States, we are heading into Super Bowl weekend. Ross, how do you typically take in the biggest NFL game of the year?
This is going to be a good year. We got battle of the quarterbacks. I want to say Kansas City is a small favorite, so I don't know. Should be a good one. Who you got, Dave?
Geez, that's a good question. I'll go with Kansas City as well. Mick, do you get into American football at all over the sea?
I do. I'm not partial to any real team. You know, I don't cover the house in any colors or anything, but I just love sports, so I'll be watching for sure.
Well, this actually brings us to our opening exchange for Heat 1. With the Super Bowl weekend upon us, we're gearing up for a one-day battle to claim the undisputed gridiron title. And this relates to the redesign of the championship tour, which, for the first time in history, will decide its world champions in a one-day event, the WSL Finals, this September at Lower Trestles. Surfing now has its own version of Super Bowl Sunday. So the Heat 1 question is the WSL Finals a one-day winner-take-all event, the way you want to see the world title get decided? Mick, as you've got some hardware in this space, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, look, I think it's an incredible idea. Reason being, you know, we saw what happened, Italo versus Gabe, the whole world tuned in. And then we go back through the years. Everyone knows where they were when those final days went on. On top of that, when the best surfers are going for a world title, who do they want to surf against? They want to be the best guys. And so I'm all for it. I think it's a great thing. I think it's something that is going to blow the minds of not only the surfers involved, but fans and spectators alike.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a weird one for me, Mick. I really do like the idea of having like a bunch of eyeballs on our sport in one day. I think that's going to do nothing but be a very cool thing to watch. You know, my problem with it, Mick, is anyone can get red hot in one day. That's what I struggle with. I would rather see maybe one event to determine the world champion. Maybe we can have 2 or 3 days and have the best guys battle it out for a world title that way and sort of capture a Super Bowl event that way. But with just one day, I don't know. It's going to be a very different world champion.
I don't feel like there's any more motivation than coming down to one day. Being there in that sort of situation a few times, the rest of the year sort of just washes away, and it's like, all right, today's the day. And for someone like John to go up against a Gabe or an Italo or a Geordie or a Philippe or any one of that matter, I can see the motivation just go through the roof. And that's why I think it's going to be the most exciting event we'll ever see.
Yeah, I think I heard you say this a couple episodes ago, Mick, where I want to wait and see what happens. I think everyone's going to, sort of be in the same boat to see how this plays out. There's so many scenarios where it could be a really awesome thing, or it could be sort of a flat tire. Really depends on the waves. We're going to lowers, right? And lowers, we talked about this also a couple episodes ago, where it's one of the best waves in the world to compete in, but it's, in my opinion, very specific. It's high performance. It's not a powerful wave, so it lacks the drama that, say, like West Oz or the North Shore of Hawaii or places like that have. So it's going to be sort of this narrow window to determine a world champion for the whole year, and that's where I get sort of hung up. maybe there's some sort of balance and we sort of evolve as this event pans out in front of us to see how it goes. And I'm guessing that a multiple day, one event to determine a world champion, but a multi-day event, maybe a place like West Oz or North Shore where there's all kinds of conditions to throw at you.
That could be interesting too. Look, best guys against each other all the time. I'm not opposed to that.
Well, we're going to see it go down when the WSL Finals arrives at Lower Trestles in September. And the evolution of the tour leads us straight into our topic for Heat 2. The sport of surfing is one that undergoes constant refinement, whether it's judging, schedules, event formats, you name it. And one hot button topic that continues to circulate is the sheer number of men and women on tour. Wildcards included, the fields are currently 36 men and 18 women. So for Heat 2, we are asking, should the number of surfers on the championship tour be cut down, thus eliminating some of the lower ranked competitors from the draw? Ross, what are your thoughts?
You know, I think there's some nuance to this whole subject, right? Like, I think there is probably a happy medium to where I think the goal is to, have these events in one swell, right? A 2-day event, I feel like, is probably the magic number. So if you have to, chop a few guys off the cutting board to get to that magic number, I can see that. I would hate to see a large number, though, be chopped. Like if we get down to 20 surfers or less on tour, to me, it feels a bit gimmicky, because you're going to see so many repetitive heat scenarios where guys are matching up. It just doesn't feel like a tour. And that's where, I'm not a fan of it. And not to mention, there's been so many incredible wins over the years, Mick, of guys that were in the middle of the ratings or even lower, like Keanu Asing. We had William Cardoso, Seabass, Wilco, when he sort of made that major comeback, Jeremy Flores. All these guys were like way down in the ratings that potentially wouldn't be there in the draw if they had just a small batch of surfers fighting it all year long.
Yeah, look, I'm gonna say, got to cut the numbers. But before every surfer just jumps down my throat, the only reason I say that is so we can get rid of the elimination round. If we can figure out the numbers for guys and girls where there's no elimination round, just go straight into, just knocking people out of the event. And might even add numbers for the girls. I feel like the level of women's surfing has gone through the roof, so we can add a few girls here and there. But with the guys, yeah, I think just finding that perfect number so we can just flow straight through the events. I find losing in a 3-man heat is not on. I feel like it's I want to see man on man. I don't want to see a 3-man heat because there's too many different tactics that go into it. So, look, I'd love to see the numbers change just a tiny, tiny bit. I'm with you. I think we need that array of different surfers. But, I just want to see the elimination round gone.
Well, surfing as a sport is always evolving, and that actually seems to be the theme of today's episode. And that'll actually take us to subject 3, which is wave pools. Historically speaking, places like Lemoore, California, Waco, Texas, and Bristol in the United Kingdom would not be mentioned as desirable spots for a surf trip, but the times are changing. Wave pools are popping up everywhere, creating the strange new thought exercise of the next generation of surfers potentially honing their performance surfing skills without getting near the ocean. So for Heat 3, the question is, will we see a new breed of wave pool surfers that grew up nowhere near the ocean eventually make it onto the championship tour? Mick, is this something you could see happening?
Mate, I think I'm a glass half full kind of guy in this sort of area. I'd love to see someone come out of nowhere and learn how to surf in a wave pool and then take it onto the ocean and become one of the greatest surfers of all time. Imagine the story behind it. We're seeing wave pools pop up in all kinds of places. I think there's one in South Korea. It's wild. Like, how many people are they filtering through that thing just to see who's got potential to go on to the next level? I don't know when it's going to happen, 5, 10, 15 years down the track, but I have hope. We see skateboard riders from all across all parts of the world that come through. But yeah, look, I guess the parents of these kids are going to have some cash to fork out some time in these pools.
Mick, I like it. Your little homage to Rick Kane from a wave tank in Arizona. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? There's a lot of obstacles. As you mentioned, money, that's got to be the number one thing. The other obstacle is lack of ocean knowledge. I mean, that's just going to be weird. You're basically going to have this surfer go into their teenage years and start traveling right away, which also is going to hurt the wallet. So yeah, there's a lot of obstacles there.
There's a lot of rich people in Texas.
This is true.
Well, and every Rick Kane actually needs a Chandler, so I look forward to seeing that play out in the future. And whatever happens for future generations of surfers in the wave pool era, one thing is apparent: these systems lend themselves to all kinds of surfboard and craft-related activities. And for Heat 4, we're talking equipment. We talked about how surfing as a sport is always evolving, but one place that has seemingly plateaued is in the area of equipment. The polyester tri-fin board is what you'll see in virtually any championship tour heat. Modifications to that basic backbone of competitive surfing are really rarely seen. So for Heat 4, we're asking, will the typical board used now on tour be obsolete in the next 10 years? Ross, you're up.
I think it will. I know it's a pretty big call, but in terms of materials, here's the goal. You want, as a surfer, especially on the tour, something that's always lighter, faster, and nowadays more sustainable and more durable. And I think the future is going to be in different materials. It's not going to be polyester with the old wooden stringer. It's going to be something that's going to last for 1 or 2 years. That's the biggest hang up for guys like John and all these guys on tour, is their boards get smashed after like 5 sessions because they're trying to have it lively, light, flexible. So I think carbon is where it's at. I think carbon's the future of surfing.
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with you, Ross. Look, we haven't seen a big change since 1981. Surfers are so precious when it comes to equipment. They're not going to go out and just do R&D in the off season where they're just like going nuts on, okay, this is going to be the board, because as soon as they go out in the heat and lose on it, that thing's in the bin. You talked about weight and stuff like that. There's people on tour that make their boards heavier. Chloe Andino doesn't like a really light board. And then you go into the epoxy realm, and when they come in like solid heavy waves, the epoxy's too light, doesn't sit in the water. So I think the polyester and the stringer and 3 fins is probably going to last another 50 years. Look, I'd love to see change. I'm actually riding a twin fin at the moment, which I'm totally in love with, but I don't think I would ride it in an event due to the fact that there's just too many variables.
Yeah, I think you're tripping a little bit here, Mick, just because I mean, even if you just go on the back of sustainability and durability, I mean, polyester boards are they're horrible. They don't age well at all, and that alone is a deal breaker for me. I'm sure it's been irritating for you over your career too, Mick, where you have this magic board and you're like, okay, this thing's going straight into the closet because you need to keep that precious board on ice. Everyone does that, and they still do it. I mean, imagine if you had the magic surfboard and you could just smash that thing, do huge errors on it, land on the nose, no pressure dings, nothing. The durability thing to me is huge, and again, I think that is in carbon. Carbon's is light, it's strong, and you can also play with weight. You can always go up in weight. That's not an issue.
Look, I love the fact that we're looking for cleaner possibilities rather than polyester. It is horrible for the environment. But yeah, as I said, I still feel like surfers are just so precious when it comes to equipment. Until something comes along and say one of the top surfers just blows everyone out of the water with this new equipment, they're not going to change.
I will say the best I've ever seen John surf in small waves is the last few months on these Dark Arts surfboards. They're carbon wrapped. They're super high tech, and I've never seen them go faster. So this year we'll see some of this stuff come into play.
Well, let's see it. Change the world, John.
I like it. That was a great one, and all 4 of the world's best getting creative with their equipment. When we return, a special and revered guest joins us for this week's Going Deep segment.
Kelly and as yourself as well belong to the momentum generation. So that was a very big advancement for the sport.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Getting Heated. That was a look into the latest Rip Curl film, Free Scrubber. Mick and Ross, we are in for a treat today because we are joined by none other than the three-time world champion, the patron saint of the search, and the star of the recently released Free Scrubber, the Tom Curren. Tom, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, Tommy.
Yes, Tom. Good to see you, mate.
Good to see you guys.
So Tom, let's start with you and the film, Free Scrubber. How did this film come together?
Well, we got to go down to surf down in south of the border there, and the chance that we had a great cinematographer with us, Andy Potts, and some pretty good swells. We got to just surf and get some footage.
Well, the film is amazing. Everyone should check it out. And it actually relates to today's segment for Going Deep, because we're going to take a deep dive into the singular topic that is on our minds. And you're the perfect person to join us this week because we're talking all about equipment choices. Championship Tour surfers are almost exclusively riding thrusters in today's competitive arena. And the question to you is, should there be more variety of equipment on tour? Did you yourself feel limited in your equipment while competing? Tom, you're our first guest, so let's hear your opinion.
My opinion is that the surfers are very in tune with their equipment, and I don't see really any changes on the horizon. I do feel that it's really important for even the top surfers and anybody developing and trying to develop to their maximum to surf on different boards occasionally. You see that Kelly, he's been always trying different boards, and I think it's going to be a big benefit to surf on different boards, but mostly the boards are probably going to change just little by little, and the materials may change in kind of the same materials since the modern surfing started, and as long as the waves are what we call high performance, the boards are they seem to fit in those conditions at the moment.
Yeah, Tommy, you bring up Kelly Slater, who I think is a really good example of sort of this subject matter. And I think around 2005, Kelly started really pushing the envelope with experimenting much shorter surfboards. In fact, I think at the beginning he even had that kind of blunted nose. And I think it goes hand in hand with maybe some of the older statesmen on tour that have the liberty to sort of experiment. A lot of people say that has helped surfing as a whole because everyone's boards are much shorter now compared to, say, the 90s. So Kelly's definitely helped that with surfing evolve and equipment. But he's also sacrificed a handful of heats too, riding sort of like funky boards. What's your take on that?
Kelly and as yourself as well belong to the momentum generation. So that was a very big advancement for the sport because the boards were a lot more kind of fine-tuned, a lot more rocker, a lot more flexible than they were before. What I found with that was that the boards had so much rocker that they were limited in certain conditions. Nowadays, he's leading the way and sort of taking those risks. Even this last event, he surfed a twin fin at Pipeline, which is, definitely a risk, but he had a non-elimination round there. So it depends on the type of break that you're at. If it's a kind of a slabbing wave that has only one takeoff zone, then you're sort of more allowed to take a risk with the less volume.
Tom, I remember watching you in a heat against Matt Hoy in France years ago, and you actually took out a twin keel fin, and you actually handed Matt an exceptional loss, and I think it blew everyone's mind because you're on such different equipment. For tour guys now, how would they go through the process of when to change onto some of those boards, or is it risk versus reward, or will it be something that will just come naturally and you'll know exactly the right waves to go in and change those boards up?
Yeah, thanks, Mick. That's a good question. At that point, I was sort of kind of moving away from tour life a bit, and so the heat itself was not like a world title campaign heat at the time, and so that gave me the kind of freedom to just enjoy the heat, and I ended up getting the better waves. And I actually had a heat with him recently, and I was on a very experimental board, and he got me back. So so it doesn't always work out.
Yeah. And then I guess my follow-up question to that is, if someone's going to go experiment, how far is too far? You've ridden everything from longboards to, hybrid fishers, and now you're playing around with skin boards with crazy fins. Like, how far is too far?
That's a great question. So the way I look at it is you sort of, you either pass or fail on that session. So if you're passing, and that, in other words, you're getting set waves and you're not missing opportunities on the wave itself. It's a good way to simplify things.
Well, I think everyone would give you a passing grade for free scrubber, Tom. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, make sure you go check that out. Tom, thanks so much for joining us on Going Deep. We hope we get to have you back soon.
Thanks. It's great to be with you guys.
Yeah, Tommy.
Thanks, Tom.
So that's it. That's a wrap for this week's edition of Getting Heated. Guys, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, Dave. And anyone's got any comments, please send them to Tom.
Nobody mess with Tom. You can't mess with a kerfuffle.